Hello, welcome back to another session. This is the Grant Anthony, and today we will be talking about the effective way to fight against white supremacy in America. This is inspired by the recent unjust verdict that was rendered in the George Zimmerman case in Florida and other horrendous judicial outcomes that are now coming to the light out of the state of Florida. But today we're going to talk about the effective way to eradicate white supremacy in America. The civil rights leaders in America and black preachers, particularly the civil rights leaders that are fighting against white supremacy and the oppression of black people in America, have been waging this war for over 400 years, and unfortunately, they've been taking the black community in circles for the last 400 years in their methods to eradicate white supremacy and the oppression of black people in America. What has happened in the last 400 years is that black civil rights activists have utilized marches as an effective means to bring about change. They have fought for changes in the Constitution. There has been changes in the United States Constitution that has resulted in absolutely no change in the hearts and minds and the conditions of black people in America. There have been changes and laws passed such as the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. There have been decisions rendered by the United States Supreme Court. Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson. There have been just hundreds and hundreds of cases that have been interpreted and rendered by the United States Supreme Court regarding race, and none of these efforts have resulted in the eradication of white supremacy and the oppression of black people in America. So what has happened is that people have failed to identify and realize that racism in America is a disease. It's a disease, and we must treat it that way. Passing laws, amending the Constitution, marching on Washington, D.C., meeting in churches and hearing a bunch of black preachers and civil rights activists give speeches about racism and how we should love everybody, and how, particularly, it amazes me that black preachers and black civil rights activists like to get together, call the community together, and have a community meeting at a black church or a neighborhood and give speeches concerning conditions that exist in America and how we should overcome these racial conditions. Bringing black people together in the black church does not eradicate or minimize the existence of racism. It is not black people that are racist. It is not the mindset of black people that need to be changed in America. It is the mindset of white people in America. So having neighborhood meetings, may be good, but if the entire purpose of having black people come together at a black church or a neighborhood center, if the major and entire purpose of that meeting is to eradicate racism, it's going to have no effect on the eradication or the stopping of discrimination. Passing laws and changing the Constitution and marching on Washington, D.C. and meeting at black churches is only a reaction of black civil rights activists and black preachers to the symptoms of the disease of white supremacy. Passing laws and amending the Constitution and marching on Washington and marching on this place or that place, that is only reacting to the symptoms of white supremacy. White supremacy is, in fact, a mental psychosis. It is a disease, a mental disease that must be dealt with as a mental disease. And if you want to cure the patient, you must eradicate the disease. Putting band-aids on the symptoms caused by the disease will not cure the patient. If you merely put band-aids and ointment on a symptom, you might cure the symptom, but the disease is still there. So there will always be recurring symptoms as long as the disease is allowed to remain in the body. If you want to get rid of the disease, if you want to cure the patient of the disease and get rid of all future occurrences of symptoms, then you don't focus on the symptom. You don't focus on the symptom. You focus on getting rid of the disease. If you want to forever eradicate racial oppression and white supremacy in America, you have to focus on white supremacy. You have to focus on the root of the problem. The root of the problem is the mindset of white people. Black people are not racist. The focus should not be placed on black people. The focus should not be placed on trying to convince black people to be to love anybody. It always seems to appear that white folk and black preachers taking the lead of white folk want to convince black people that they should love white folk and love everybody, and that everything will be okay, or to make vague and crazy comments that God will make everything all right. You know, God is in control, but to have people say that God will make everything all right because somebody is oppressing you is avoiding the issue. It's not focusing on the problem. The problem here is that black preachers and civil rights activists need to focus on resolving and curing the patient of the disease, the mental delusional disease of white supremacy. If black preachers and black civil rights activists are to effectively eradicate the United States of white supremacy and the racial oppression of black people in America, they will have to first change the mindset of white Americans. Like I said before, it is not the mindset of black Americans that need to be changed, because black Americans are not the racists. Black Americans are not the ones that are causing the racial oppression of black people, brown people, and minority people in America. It is white people that are in control of the institutions of America that are oppressing black, brown, and minorities in America. So we go directly to the problem. The problem is the mindset of white Americans. So that is the approach that must be taken to cure America of the mental disease and the mental psychosis that has affected the mindset of white people. Now, how do we go about doing this? The most effective way to influence or to affect white people and bring about a change in the mindset of white people regarding their their racist mentality is to demand that white preachers take the lead in this particular task. It is not a task that can be taken on by black preachers, because white congregation members will only give deference to their white preachers. White people only attend all white churches. Yes, white people attend all white churches, and they give deference to white preachers, not black preachers. Martin Luther King was an example. Racism still exists in America, despite the fact that Martin Luther King went all around for giving great speeches and dedicated his life to the eradication of racial oppression and the eradication of white supremacy. However, as we can see, the roots of white supremacy still exist and are strong. The roots of racial oppression in America still exist. So the only effective way that the mindset of white supremacy can be attacked and eradicated is for black preachers. Black preachers need to march on white churches and demand that white preachers denounce the ideology of white supremacy each and every Sunday. Not that they mention it maybe once or twice a year, but black preachers need to march on white churches and demand that white preachers denounce and talk about the existence of white supremacy in the mindset of white America. They must denounce and counsel their patients, their congregation, about their embracement of the ideology of white supremacy. Now, many white people will say that they're not prejudiced, but the fact is, white people need to stop denying that they have, in fact, embraced to some degree, have embraced some ideology of white supremacy. It's not their fault, because that's what they've been taught since they were born. That's what they've inherited or bequested from their parents. It's not their fault. However, it is their fault if they deny having embraced or heard of these particular ideologies, the ideology of white supremacy. White people, many of them can't help believing the way they do, because that's been taught to them. They didn't have a choice in selecting what they were taught as children. So their mindset that they have right now is a result of their parents and society. A lot of times parents don't teach their children to hate other people. But for some reason, small children have developed or embraced these ideologies, even though their parents have not intentionally taught these things to them. They receive it from television, radio, and other subliminal instruments that influence them. So just saying saying that, I'm not prejudiced, or that's not me, that doesn't apply to me, consciously it might not apply to you, but if you think about it, you have embraced to some degree, the ideology that you are good or superior in some manner to black people and other people of color because of your race. So white preachers need to attack this problem seriously and address their congregations. That's the only way that the mindset of white supremacy in this country will be eradicated. It is a task that must be undertaken by white preachers, and for civil rights activists and black preachers, particularly civil rights activists, for civil rights activists to continue going in circles, marching on this building, this city, that city, requesting that laws be changed, the Constitution be changed. All of that has failed. That has been done for the last 400 years. Laws have been changed, civil rights acts have been passed, desegregation has been requested. You must understand that you cannot legislate morality. Let me say that again. You cannot legislate morality. Morality must be a change in the heart. And the most effective way to change people's hearts is through their churches and their preachers. So if preachers are serious about bringing about equal justice and racial justice in America, if white preachers are serious about helping to bring about racial justice and ending racial injustice and fighting for justice and equality, then they must take the lead in teaching and denouncing racial superiority, the concept and the ideology of racial superiority. That is something that black preachers cannot do. Black preachers cannot effectively change the mindsets of the mass population of white people in America. That's something that must be done by white preachers. Now, many white preachers will first have to have their minds eradicated of white supremacy before they can take on that task, because many white preachers in America are, to some degree, racist in and of themselves. They must accept the fact first that Jesus was a black man. If you can't accept the fact that Jesus was a black man when it's described in the Bible that Jesus was a black man, then you got a problem. That is your problem right there, white preachers. If you cannot teach to your congregation that Jesus was a black-skinned man, then that itself is evidence. I don't have to argue it. That behavior itself is manifestation that there exists to some degree the embracement of white supremacy in your mind and anybody else's mind that refuse to admit what the Bible says, not what I or anybody else says, but what the Bible that you take to church every Sunday and read says in regards to the color of Jesus. If you cannot admit and talk about the color of Jesus as described in the Bible in your church because it might offend somebody, then that in and of itself is evidence and a manifestation that white supremacy in some degree exists in your mind that needs to be eradicated. Very interesting. Now, I don't think that there is any church that you can walk into, particularly one of these mega white churches or small white churches, and talk about Jesus and a black man without offending some white person. First thing they'll say is it doesn't matter. Well, if that doesn't matter, then we might as well throw the whole Bible in the garbage, because everything else in the Bible doesn't matter. If you can say that something that's taught in the Bible doesn't matter, well, why is it in the Bible? You can say that everything else contained in the Bible doesn't matter. Well, that's not diverse. That's not diverse. If civil rights activists are serious about making a change in America, then serious efforts must be taken. If civil rights activists and black preachers in America are serious about bringing about an end to racial injustice, then they must have the audacity to approach the problem, the disease that exists, that's causing racial oppression and inequality. Black civil rights activists must stop being motivated by monetary gains. Black civil rights activists must attack the problem directly. Black civil rights activists and black preachers, if they're serious about bringing about a change and an end to racial injustice in America, they must have the audacity to approach white preachers and demand that white preachers and attack the issue directly. Take the lead in making a change in the mindset of racist white America. Racist white America will not listen to a black preacher or a black civil rights activist. White America will only listen to, and they might not listen to them, but the only chance of changing the mindset of white America is for white preachers to take a lead every Sunday, Wednesday night Bible study, Thursday night Bible study, and Sundays, to make it a priority issue that is discussed every time people step into a church about the eradication and the mindset of white America. And they can justify this by saying that, you know, we should not hate black people, because if we hate black people, we might as well just close the door of the church. let's close the door of the church. Why are we in church every Sunday? Why we go to Bible study every Wednesday? If we don't like black people, why are we reading from this book? Because this book describes our Savior as a black man. Look at Revelation 1. It describes this man as having an afro and skin burnt like bronze or copper. It's a black man with an afro. So if we got a problem with our black brothers that exist today, then we got a problem with Jesus. And we're just being hypocritical and wasting our time coming to church every Sunday and Wednesday and Tuesday and Thursday and going to conferences and calling ourselves Christians if we don't accept our Savior himself as being a black man. Let's be for real. Who's going to judge you? White preacher? Your white congregation? Or the white board of directors? Or God and Jesus? You got to make that decision now. Who's going to judge you? If you're afraid to teach the truth, then you need to remove yourself from the pulpit. Because in the end, it will be Jesus and God that will judge you, not the congregation and the board of directors that you're afraid of. Black preachers and black civil rights activists, you got to get your priorities straight, and you got to decide, which master you're going to follow. You can't follow two masters at the same time. You can't be concerned about money and how somebody feels about you, and also follow Jesus at the same time. Jesus said, the Bible says that you can't serve two masters at the same time. You cannot be concerned about how these people think about you or about money. You can't serve Mammon and God at the same time. You cannot be afraid to confront white preachers about taking the lead in changing the mindset of their white congregations in white America. You cannot be afraid to confront white people about making a change in their mindset that would result in the end of racial injustice and oppression in America. You cannot be afraid to confront white people about anything concerning the injustice of racism in America. You cannot be afraid to confront white people about the fact that Jesus was a black man. And I don't hear this, it doesn't matter. It does matter. It mattered to Jesus. It mattered to God. You cannot say it doesn't matter. It mattered to God to choose a black man and not a white man and make him his son here on earth to represent him. It mattered to God to place the color of Jesus in the Bible. So you better be sure that it matters. White racial superiority and black racial inferiority, there must be a reverse, a total reverse of the methodology that was used on black people. White supremacists use psychological techniques in order to condition black people to believe that they were racially inferior. So it would take the same psychological conditioning to reverse this insidious technique. White people and black people must come to understand and come to have a mindset that is eradicated of this belief that just because you're white, you're superior, and because you're black, you're inferior. In order to have racial discrimination and the oppression of black people in America terminated, there must be a change in the mindset of white and black people. Now, I say white and black people because white people need to stop thinking that they're, for some reason, that they're inferior because of the color of their skin. color of your skin has absolutely nothing to do with your ability to express your intelligence. Environment, living conditions have more effect on your ability to excel than race. Now, you may find many black preachers and black civil rights activists giving a lot of pushback when you say that they should confront white preachers, because to some degree, unfortunately, they have come to believe that they're inferior. And those civil rights activists that are serious about bringing about change in America and not becoming popular civil rights celebrities and making a profit out of the problems that occur between blacks and whites in America, if they're not more interested in their civil rights celebrity and making money from these conflicts, if they are in fact serious about eliminating racism and attacking the cause of racism, then they must demonstrate that they have the audacity to go after the problem itself. They must stand up like men and attack the mindset, those that control the mindset, and demand that they be held responsible for changing the mindset that exists in white America. Like I said before, it is not the mindset of black that needs to be changed. The mindset of black Americans or African Americans does not need to be changed. So black civil rights activists, black preachers, stop preaching black people every Sunday. Stop having meetings and telling black people that they should love everybody. Loving everybody is not going to end racial oppression in America. Black civil rights activists and black preachers, stop giving sermons and speeches to black audiences telling them that they should love everybody and that they should fight for equal justice. Start using your time and energy effectively and intelligently. If you are serious about ending racial injustice in America, you won't be talking to black people, because black people are not the ones who are inflicting racial oppression against their own people. Black civil rights activists and black preachers, if you are serious about ending racial injustice, you will not go to a black church and give a speech that racism is wrong. You will be going to white churches and speaking to white congregations and expressing your concerns and beliefs that white injustice should stop in America. Let me say that again, because some of you, it might go over your head. Black preachers and black civil rights activists, you should stop going to black churches and stop having rallies in black neighborhoods and having neighborhood sessions so you can discuss the injustice of racial oppression. You should have these meetings in white churches. Your congregation, the congregation that you're speaking to should be all white. Your audience that you're speaking to should be all white. Black civil rights activists and black preachers, you should start giving speeches and sermons in neighborhood assemblies to white audiences and talking to them about changing their mindsets regarding racial white racial superiority. Stop addressing these matters to black audiences. Black audiences are not the ones that are oppressing anybody. They're not the ones that have a need to have their mindset changed in regards to racial oppression. It is the mindset of white people that need to be changed, and your time, energy, and efforts need to be spent addressing these people. Now you might be afraid or have some reservations about speaking to white people about their mental attitude. But if that's so, you need to have white preachers speak to that issue instead. Like I said before, even if you go to a white congregation and have white assemblies where the entire crowd is white, these people are going to listen to you anyway. The most effective way to address the mindset of white people is to have white preachers, these so-called mega preachers. What about Kenneth Copeland, Joel Osteen, all these white men? Why aren't these white men speaking about racism and the existence of racism in America? Joel Osteen, Kenneth Copeland, Kenneth Hagin, all of these white preachers, why aren't they speaking about the existence of racism in America today? And why are they not fighting and leading the way, challenge and denounce the existence of racism? And why are they not addressing the mindset, the racist mindset of white people? Everybody come back and say, well, it doesn't matter. It's the spirit that matters. Well, when we get in the spirit, we'll be in the spirit. But until we get in the spirit, we're living here on earth. We're living here in the presence, in the flesh. And the flesh is expressing racial oppression and manifesting racial injustice when it comes to black people. So we cannot live in an imaginary world and simply dismiss the fact that racism exists. We cannot dismiss the fact that racism exists and merely try and divert a legitimate issue by saying that God is a spirit and everything, nothing matters unless, it doesn't really matter because we're spirit beings. We're not spirit beings. If somebody cuts you, but you will bleed. Spirits don't bleed. You living here on earth in the flesh and blood. And until you die, you will live as a human being. So let's get off this spiritual thing about it doesn't matter because, you know, God is a spirit and we're spiritual brothers and sisters. Well, we're not spiritual brothers and sisters until we leave this flesh. So let's get out of that lie and stop trying to sidestep the issue at hand. The issue at hand is racism in America, not spiritual existence after we die. When we die, God will handle that, and we will be where we are in the spirit with God. Until that time, let's deal with reality where we're at now. We're in the flesh, and there is racism that exists in America, and you white preachers, Kenneth Copeland, George Hagan, I can't name all of them, but all of them, all you preachers out there, all you white preachers out there that refuse to denounce racism and the existence of racism and the need for there to be a change in the mental mindset of white America, a shame on you. God is looking at you. What do you think God has to say about white preachers' failure and to denounce racism? What do you think Jesus has to say about white preachers that say that they love Jesus and they are afraid and they absolutely deny the existence of racism in America? What do you think Jesus is saying right now when he's looking down at these white preachers saying that racism does not exist in America and there's no need to fight racism in America? What do you think Jesus is saying? Well, you can guess what he's saying if you read Revelations 1, because in Revelations 1 it says that Jesus was a black man. So Jesus sitting in heaven saying, man, I tell you, these people saying that they love me and they're my brothers, but if I was on earth, I'll be a black man, and they would be saying that I don't need any help. They would ignore me on earth. They would ignore me because I'm a black man. Revelation says that Jesus was a black man with an afro. And these white preachers that are down there now on earth are saying that there's no racism in America, and there's no need to for us to address racism or to address the injustice that's being done to black people. There's no need for us white preachers and for anybody white to be concerned about the racial oppression of black people, despite the fact that our Savior himself is a black man, and if he was on earth, we'll be ignoring him too. So to ignore black people and the racial oppression of black people here on earth is to ignore the oppression of Jesus Christ if he was on earth, because Jesus himself was a black man. And that is not something that I said. That's something that the Bible expresses in Revelation 1. It's expressed all throughout the Bible that the Israelites were black people. Paul was a black man. He was a black man. Peter said, I'm black. Paul was a black man. Moses was a black man. You know, it's all of these things are expressed in the Bible. You know, and I only mention that to exemplify the reoccurring theme that exists in the Bible about the color of the Israelites and Jesus. All throughout the Bible, it is expressly stated that the Israelites, Paul, Peter, John, Jesus' first cousin, Jesus himself, all these people were undeniably black people. So for any white preacher or white person to say that it really doesn't matter what color Jesus was, is to say that it really doesn't matter that we discriminate and oppress Jesus and the Israelites. It really doesn't matter that racial injustice exists against Jesus and the Israelites. If Jesus and the Israelites were on earth today as they were in the days of the Bible, racial oppression and racial discrimination would exist, and they would be inflicted with the same racial oppression that black Americans are experiencing today. So, black preachers and black civil rights activists, it's up to you. Continue going in circles and getting the same results. Continue marching on Washington, D.C., celebrating the annual celebration of Martin Luther King's March on Washington, D.C., covering some other man's ground that he's already covered. Continue marching over the Edmunds Pettus Bridge in celebration of what some other man did at another time concerning a real issue, or address real issues that exist today in your time. Are you going to celebrate what some other man did to end racial oppression in America? Are you going to celebrate Martin Luther King's March on Washington, D.C., or marching across the Edmunds Pettus Bridge? Are you going to celebrate another man's efforts to end racial injustice by marching on Washington or marching across the Edmunds Pettus Bridge every year? Are you going to merely make light of the efforts, the real efforts that were done by men in the past that were addressing real issues of their time and in their fight against racial injustice? Or are you going to fight against racial injustice yourself? Are you going to address real issues that exist in your time and make a legitimate effort to end racial injustice, or are you going to just play games? by celebrating another man's efforts? Or are you going to address racial injustice in a real way that exists in your time? My suggestion that to you, civil rights activists and white preachers, and it's just a suggestion, my suggestion to you is that you stop going in circles and try a new approach. The only approach that I think, in my humble opinion, that will have an effect on the mental disease of white supremacy is to go directly at the problem. It's a mental problem, so you change the mental problem, or you eradicate a mental problem by making a change in the mind, the mindset. And the only effective way of doing that is to have white preachers, or demanding that white preachers. They're not going to do it on themselves. If they were going to do it on themselves, they would have did it already. So, you're going to have to take the effort, like civil rights activists and black preachers. You're going to have to make the concerted effort in your civil rights activities to direct them towards the white preacher. You're going to have to demand that the white preacher denounce the ideology of white racial supremacy and black racial inferiority, and you're going to have to demand that white preachers denounce each and every Sunday and every Wednesday at Bible study. It needs to be a priority issue on every Sunday school lesson and every church service. Every time there's something happening in a white church, they need to address the issue of white supremacy, and not only address it, but to denounce it. It's a serious problem that has affected America for the last 400 years. So it needs to be given serious attention. Not once a week, but every time a white congregation goes into the church. They need to get some counseling. Counseling, intensive counseling. Not until those men that are considered to be the moral leaders in white society take a stance against racial injustice and the abhorrent ideology of white supremacy, will there be a change in the racial oppression and injustice against black people.